Hello everyone! Good afternoon! We are the group 1 that will be presenting psychoanalytic or psychoanalysis theory of Sigmund Freud. Before we proceed to our discussion, we would like to introduce ourselves first for all of you to know the person or people behind this discussion. My name is Ashima Makudi and I am currently taking up Bachelor of Early Childhood Education.
Assalamualaikum and good day. I am Rehana Barani Abidin, a second-year student from the College of Education, studying BTVETED or Bachelor in Technical Vocational Teacher Education, major in Home Economics.
Hi, good day everyone. I am Fatma C. Abbas, 18 years of age, a first-year student from the College of Education taking up Home Economics in BTVETED.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. I'm Amal Abdullah and I will talk about the last part of our discussion.
So before we proceed to our main discussion regarding the Freud psychoanalytic theory, we would like to first introduce to you who is Sigmund Freud. So now introducing to you Sigmund Freud, who was an Austrian neurologist and the founder of psychoanalysis. He was born on May 6, 1856 on Freiburg in Moravia, but moved to Vienna with his family in 1857. He was actually an exceptionally gifted child and an excellent student. He attended a medical school in Vienna and became involved in neuropsychology research and studied in Paris with some of the most prominent psychologists of the time. So after spending some time in Berlin, he returned to Vienna and married one of his patients. So staying in Vienna, he set up a psychiatric practice. He adopted a new form of treatment with his patients that involved talking about their problems to trigger emotional release known as repression, which is now widely seen as the basis of psychoanalysis theory. So now the question is, how did psychoanalytic theory was founded? Well, basically, Freud's private practice treated women who suffered from what was called hysteria at the time, and their complaints hadn't been taken seriously at all. So with the help of Joseph Breuer, I don't know if I pronounced the name correctly, but yes, anyway, dalawa sila ni Dr. Freud ang nag-develop ng psychoanalysis. So nung pinagaling nila si Miss Anna O, one of the patient of Dr. Freud, which is a depressed woman and had a hysteria. So let's say they treated Miss Anna O using the talk therapy or talking cure. So sa talk therapy nito, pinag-usapan nila ang mga nakaraan or mga past trauma ni Miss Anna O na nag-cause di umano sa kanyang disorder. So kumbaga in-analyze ni Dr. Freud kung ano ang laman ng psyche ni Miss Anna O. Kaya siguro doon niya na-derived yung word na psychoanalysis. So now moving on, in 1923, Dr. Freud developed a benign mouth tumor associated with his heavy smoking, which he had removed eventually. So years had passed, his mouth tumor returned and he requested the help of his friend to assist him in committing suicide. So unintentionally, his friend gave him a large doses of morphine, which ultimately led to Dr. Freud's death on September 22, 1939.
If you can recall the sayings that our grandmother, or perhaps even us, we would say whenever we see a person having a problem attitude, we would always say that baka kaya siya nagkaganyan kasi baka may pinagdadaanan siya. Noong bata pa siya, baka lumaki siya sa abusive family, and so on. And did you know that that kind of narrative idea is actually from the influence of Freud's theory, which is psychoanalysis. Psychoanalysis or psychoanalytic theory consists of topics: psychosexual development, personality components, which include the three components in personality adjustment, topographical method, and defense mechanism. In relation to our discussion, I will mention words that play significant role understanding this discussion. The first is erogenous zone, a specific area that becomes the focus of the pleasure needs. Fixation, persistent focus on an earlier psychosexual stage due to unresolved conflict in the stage. It is actually the result of the unmet needs of the specific stages in psychosexual development. Last is overindulgence. Needs were too well satisfied, causing individual to be reluctant to leave a particular stage. This happened when the particular stage was oversatisfied and it causes the child to stay in the same stage of psychosexual development. Moving on to the first topic, which is Freud's 5 stages of psychosexual development. The first stage is oral stage, from age 0 to 1 years old. In this stage, the erogenous zone is the mouth. The child is focused on oral pleasure or sucking. If this stage is not properly met, there is a tendency that fixation takes place. There are 2 fixations that will occur in this phase if the need of the child is not met and or if the child is oversatisfied. They may not leave this stage and will do such thing until he or she grow up. The first fixation is oral receptive, having a stronger tendency to smoke, drink alcohol, and overeat. I will give you an example of how this happens. When a man named Prince was 4 months old, his mother stopped from breastfeeding him or feeding him milk in a bottle, which is too early. This means that his oral pleasure was not satisfied. That is why he developed a habit which is to smoke because gusto niyang isatisfy yung pleasure na hindi niya nadama noong bata pa siya. Oral aggressive is a kind of fixation that a child have tendency to bite his or her nails, use curse words or even gossip, and suck his finger into his mouth. This happens when the child is oversatisfied through oral pleasure. Because of the oversatisfaction that he or she felt like sucking bottles, breastfeeding, and sucking pacifier, he or she then will develop mannerism like biting nails and sucking his finger into his mouth even if he turns old. This theory believes that if the oral stage of a child is well satisfied, he is expected to have a good personality that will help him have a good future. In anal stage, from age 1 to 3 years old, the erogenous zone is the anus and bladder. The child finds satisfaction in eliminating and retaining feces. This stage is where the child has interest to eliminate his or her own feces. The guidance of parents is needed in this stage, for some conflict may occur if it is not guided well. There are 2 conflicts may occur if this stage is not handled well by parents or guardians. These are anal retentive and anal expulsive. Anal retentive is an obsession with cleanliness, perfection, and control. The child will develop a personality like this when the parents are too strict in toilet training. While in anal expulsive, the child or person may become messy and disorganized. This is the result when the child toilet training was neglected by parents and waiting the child to poop in his diaper or pants before cleaning him or her. The third stage is phallic stage, from age 3 to 6 years old. This stage is one of the reasons why the theory of Freud was argued and called the most controversial theory during his time. Because he lived in the Victorian era, where conservatism starts, terms about sexual thing is a taboo in that era. In this stage, the erogenous zone is genitals. Children become interested in what makes boys and girls different. This is the phase where children could distinguish the differences of genders and or sexes. As the children discovers the differences between female and male gender, boys' conflicts occur with a rivalry towards his same sex, and that is his father. And this is called Oedipus complex. Boys develop unconscious sexual desire for their mother. Boys may fear their father will punish them for these feelings, thus the castration anxiety. This complex is actually based on a Greek myth where a young man named Oedipus kills his father and then marries his mother. When he discovers what he does or what he has done, he pokes his eyes out. This is a famous myth, but anyway, this complex is when the boy child wishes to own his mother and fantasizes of getting rid of his father. However, he is aware that his father is strong in fear that the father will punish him if he discovers the desire of the child to his mother. And that fear towards his father, Freud called it castration anxiety. For Electra complex, girls develop unconscious attraction toward their father. Coined by other psychologist Carl Jung 1913 to describe a similar sensation in girls. The conflict here is the envious personality of a girl or girl's child to what boys or men have, which is the private part, because they wanted to be a man to gain a power. She believes or they believe that men are the powerful among all and that having what men have, which is their private part, will make them powerful. The occurrence of this conflict may be prevented with the presence of the father for Oedipus complex and the mother for Electra complex. If they are present in the development of child during this stage or age, this conflict can be prevented or avoided. The effect of the parents being around those stages, they will take the role of their gender properly. Like for men, they will learn to take the male role and respect differences of gender. And if the parents fail to do so, the child will grow up aggressive towards female and has no respect. For Electra complex, if a child girl or a girl child conflict was not resolved and or guided, she will grow up having an inferiority complex towards man or men. The latency stage, starting from 6 to 12 years old, there is no erogenous zone and no fixation here. Children focus on the acquisition of physical and academic skills. The children are more focused on their outside environmental world, social world, and academic. They learn to socialize and form a group, boys group and girls group. They will also discover habits and learn to be interested in acquiring knowledge. Actually, there are no sin conflicts in this stage because they are only focused on developing social rule and academic and all of the acquired knowledges, and these are a positive and are beneficial to the children's future. The last stage is genital stage. The erogenous zone is the genitals. Adolescents focus their sexual urges toward the opposite sex peers. According to Freud, this is when an individual begins to have strong sexual interest in the opposite sex. Unlike the latency which children are diverted in schools, friends, place works, and so on, the phallic na focus sa self-pleasure, dito sa genital ay gumagana ang heterosexual ng tao, which is being romantically attracted to opposite sex. Nagkakagusto ka na sa iba, nagkaka-crush, nagmamahal ka na sa opposite sex mo, and sexual contact occurs. If yung bata na orally fixated, maaapektuhan nito ang genital stage. Ang mangyayari pag orally fixated ka is malaki din yung oral desire mo, which is hilig nila ang mga engage or mag-engage into sexual activity through oral like kissing activity. Naghahanap sila ng satisfaction orally, pero ang effect ng oral fixation sa tao pag lumaki na, usually they are unaware na hilig nila ang mga ganoong activity. Ang sa kanila lang talaga is masatisfy yung sarili nila.
And let's tackle the next topic, which is the Freud's personality components. So Freud described and focused on three parts of the psyche, also known as the three components of personality, which he identified as the ID, the ego, and the superego. The first one is the ID, in which plays a vital role in one's personality. This is the disorganized part of the psyche where instincts and impulses rule. The ID has our unconscious desires and drives that aren't accepted socially or within your conception of what is right and wrong. So in short, this is the immature component of personality. It is only a primary process thinker, so it is primitive, irrational, and illogical. An example is if you are walking down the street and you are very hungry. And that time you are walking, the ID rules you. So when you see an apple or water in a table you are passing by, you take it for yourself and didn't thought of what to do other than eating or drinking those. You didn't think who owns it or is it safe to eat or drink. The ID is the only part of the personality that is present at birth, according to Freud. Just like an just like an innocent baby who cries to things she or he wants. So the ID contains all of the life and death instincts, which Freud believed help compel behavior. This aspect of personality does not change as people grow. Believe it or not, if you are in danger or in any rush things or works, the ID rules you. The common situation is when you are walking in a road and a random stray dog started running towards you. And because of your fear and what we call adrenaline, all you think about is to run away from that dog. That instinct, that illogical thinking is the ID. You didn't think na, baka may hinahabol na iba or baka may nakita lang sa unahan kaya tumatakbo siya. So you already concluded that you are the one that dog is chasing. So that's it. The ID is regarded as entirely unconscious. The ID operates on the pleasure principle in which it is the immediate satisfaction of its needs and desires. It only cares about its needs at that very moment. Kung ano lang yung maisip mo, yun na yun. So the next personality component is the ego, in which slowly begins to emerge when a person turns toddler to preschooler. So the ego mediates between the ID and superego to choose what you do or what a person does. So the ego operates mostly in the conscious mind, although it may call on the preconscious mind for information and memories. This is when you are critically thinking of what to do, you are conscious of what you will choose or say. Though you still use your preconscious mind to help you remember something in your past or in your memories. So, the ego operates using the reality principle in which a person is already aware that others also have needs to be met. And this is the part where a person needs to decide that that is why it is called the deciding agent of the personality. It is the one who decides if a person will be taken control by the ID or the superego. This is also the part where you already know how to decide for your own. You have the right to choose what you want, what you need, or even what you want to do. The first example in the ID that when you are walking down the road and found something to eat in the part of the ego, you won't get those foods that easily. You will first decide what to do with it. You will if you will take it or leave it that way. And being run by the ego, you won't eat those because of the thoughts like, what if someone owns it? What if there's someone out there who owned those and needed it the most? That critical thinking made you decide not to eat those foods. You meet the realities of life that you need to be aware of or to know in order to blend in the society. So decision making, listening not just to yourself but for others' opinions, suggestions, and perceptions, and realizations hit you and punches you in the face that you are not the only one who needs this and that you are not the only one who needs attention, and that is the ego. The last personality component is the superego, which embodies a person's moral aspect. It tries to perfect and civilize our behavior. It suppressed all unacceptable urges of the ID and struggles to make the ego act upon idealistic standards rather than upon realistic principles. So this likened to conscience in which exerts influence on what others considers right or wrong. So in this part of personality, it deals with the right and wrong decisions that your ego made or makes. So when your ego chose to do good things, then the superego feels good and calm. But when the ego is driven by the ID, the desire of the ID, then guilt will be felt by the person. And that guilt is what we call superego. It shows and feels the good and the wrongs of your actions and decisions made by your ego. So those are the personality components of fraud. The ID, which operates by our unconscious mind, doing things without thinking. The ego, which is the realizations and the decisions we made, that is being operated by both the unconscious, conscious, and preconscious mind. And the superego, which is our conscience, our guilt, and being operated by our unconscious, conscious, and preconscious mind. So the next topic is the three components and personality adjustments. This our well-adjusted person is one who has strong ego, who can help satisfy the needs of the ID without going against superego while maintaining the person's sense of what is logical, practical, and real. This may apply again in the first example. If you are walking down a road hungry, then you pass by to a food and a table. So to satisfy your idea of hungriness and wanting to eat those foods without fighting the superego within yourself, the ego, being a logical thinker, will think of something to do. You will think practically how, and you will be called well-adjusted person if you chose to wait for the one who owns those foods. Wait for the owner, and when the owner arrives, you will have to ask permission or ask him to give you some to eat. Then you have them. You eat those, fill your hungry tummy, satisfy your ID without feeling guilty for eating those foods. Next, the ability of the learner to be well adjusted is largely influenced by how the learner brought up. This is how the way a person is being raised. What his or her parents taught her, what he learns and adapts in the environment he is living in, how well educated he is when it comes to knowing what is right from wrong. Lastly is that Freud also believed that the personality of an individual is formed early during the childhood years. And yes, that is right. As we grow old, as we step into our childhood life, our parents, our teachers, or even other people taught us to do this and that, learn this and that. So we used to do what is being taught to us, and we started to adapt the things that we are taught to or what we see in others' action. So let us now move to the topographical model. So first and foremost, a topographical model is a scaled down version of an area of land and contours that show change in elevation. In short, topographical model is like a graphic, a map or a chart that shows the level of something you want to express in a more informative way. So this is the topographical model of Freud that shows the level of our minds. He expressed his idea through this iceberg-like scale or chart. On the top of the iceberg is the conscious. So observe that it is the only part that is being exposed. So why? Because our conscious mind is those qualities that we always show freely. It only consists of a small portion of what in who we really are. These are the behaviors that we usually let people see, like a person being shy, being friendly, bad, and so on. And we are aware of those behaviors that we show. The next is the preconscious in the middle part but stays underwater, unlike the conscious that floats freely under water. This preconscious, also known as the subconscious, is the part where the facts about us is in it. It is not part of the conscious since we do not use it or show it all the time. These are the information that we know consciously but not always active in our mind. These are our name, mobile number, age, birth, and so on. Common facts that are being reached when we must or if we are asked to. It is in our conscious mind but not literally in our consciousness. We only recall it if we need to. So that is why it is stored in the pre-conscious part of our mind together with our past and memories. And this is also where the superego and ego reside because we must decide how and when to tell this information and is it right or wrong to reveal it. Last is the unconscious that lies deeply underwater, hidden in short. These are the emotions, feelings, beliefs, and temptations within us that we hide in aren't present in our conscious minds. So a very good example is when we are asked if we are okay. We say we are fine, but deep within us we are not. So you saying fine is your conscious mind. It is your conscious mind talking, but your decision of not telling the truth is your ego and what you truly feel. So you not being okay is your unconscious mind. And the water in the chart represents the things we are not aware of. Those are the experiences we missed to experience and not part of our personalities. And that water is what we call non-conscious.
So we will now proceed to the last discussion of our report, which is the defense mechanism. Sigmund Freud noted a number of ego defense which he refers throughout his written works. His daughter Anna Freud developed these ideas and elaborated on them, adding 10 of her own. So what does defense mechanism actually mean? Defense mechanism is a tactic developed by the ego to protect against anxiety in order to deal with anxiety. Freud believed that defense mechanisms help shield the ego from the conflicts created by the id, superego, and reality. In further explanation to what Freud meant about defense mechanism happened or is used when the person is overpressured of his or her problem. A person makes strategies to escape the unpleasant that the problem causes him by using defense mechanism. These defense mechanisms are actually created by id and superego, while the role of the ego is to control the chosen decision of id and superego. Ego is the one who executes the defense mechanisms. Moreover, the purpose of the defense mechanism is to balance the mental state of a person. If the person does not use defense mechanism and drown himself to the problem instead, there is a possibility that he would have a mental problem. However, there is also a limitation in using defense mechanisms, for it will create more problem if it is overused. Let me introduce defense mechanisms starting from denial. Denial is a defense mechanism involves a refusal to accept reality, thus blocking external events from awareness. Example, Josh is an addict smoker and denies that smoking is bad for his health, though he is a grown man who is expected to distinguish right from wrong, but he still chose to do such thing and keep on denying it. Repression is an unconscious defense mechanism employed by the ego to keep disturbing or threatening thoughts from becoming conscious. This is the kind of mechanism where Freud said that if the repressed memory is still hidden in the memory of a person, technically conflict sa utak, conflict will occur and that kind of problem is related to the repressed memory. Example, when a teenage girl was molested by her own father, which caused her trauma, she will force herself to forget that it happened. Displacement. Displacement is the redirection of an impulse, usually aggression, onto a powerless substitute target. The target can be a person or an object that can serve as a symbolic substitute. Example, Angie was scolded by her mother but could not say anything because of fear. When she came to school, her classmates are inviting her to eat with them, but Angie turned them down and shouted them, telling she does not want to be with them. Projection. An individual attributes unwanted thoughts, feelings, and motives onto another person. Example, when a man who cheats on his partner thinks that his girlfriend is doing the same thing, which results in an accusation to his partner. Reaction formation is a psychological defense mechanism in which a person goes beyond denial and behaves in the opposite way to which he or she thinks or feels. Example, when you fail your preliminary exam and you feel sad about it, but do not want your classmates to see you sad about it. Then when your classmates try to comfort you, but you react differently with how you really feel. You will just say, "No, it's okay, I'm fine, and it's not even a deal to me." Regression. Proposed by Anna Freud, whereby the ego reverts to an earlier stage of development, usually in response to stressful situation. Regression functions as a form of retreat, enabling a person to psychologically go back in time to a period when the person felt safer. Example, when a grown teacher acts childish way when she does not get what she wants, she would throw tantrums like crying out loud despite her age. This defense mechanism is usually nagiging bata yung gumagawa nito. Bumabalik sa pagkabata yung personality nila. And dito is parang ginagamit nila ito pang escape sa problema nila. And ang ginagawa nila is naghahanap sila ng love from someone. Parang gusto nilang ma-feel ulit yung love na naranasan nila. An example of this is pag yung dalawang married couple is nag-away na parang na-feel nung babae na hindi na siya mahal nung husband niya, and ang gagawin niya is aalis siya sa bahay nila, tapos pupunta siya sa bahay nila kung saan nakatira yung mama at papa niya, and doon siya maghahanap ng comfort para maka-feel din siya ng love, ma-feel niya ulit yung love na dating nafe-feel niya. Rationalization, proposed by Anna Freud, involving a cognitive distortion of the facts. To make an event or an impulse less threatening, we do it often enough on a fairly conscious level when we provide ourselves with excuses. Example, Lily did not study the entire week for her upcoming exam, and when the examination starts, Lily failed to pass the exam, then told herself it was God's will. Sublimation, converting the unpleasant emotion or experience into a more socially acceptable form. This one is a good mechanism because it is harmless to the one using it as well as to the society. Example, when Taylor Swift is brokenhearted, she wrote songs about his ex in order to release the pain that her ex-boyfriend caused her. However, her kind of mechanism makes everybody happy because of the great songs she made.
In this conclusion, according to KJCB, the psychoanalytic theory faces some criticism mainly from two quarters. The first criticism comes the realm of psychoanalysis. It aims against the theory of sexuality. The second one comes from outside the realm of psychoanalysis. It merely intends to question the scientific status of the psychoanalytic method. Adler and Jung are close discipline of Sigmund Freud, but they still dissent against Freud's libido theory and departed from his orientation, moved away and established their own school of psychology. However, Fisher and Greenberg on 1996 argued that Freud's theory should be evaluated in terms of a specific hypothesis rather than as a whole. They concluded that there is evidence to support Freud's concept of oral and anal personalities. They found little evidence of the Oedipal conflict and no support for Freud's views on women's their sexuality and how their development differs from men. It's very hard to demonstrate the theories of psychoanalytic by Freud's. Like as we know that the universe is broad and we might have a strong equipment to discover new things, but we always have a limitation as a human, and that makes our discovery endless. Unlike our research about into space with a limitless study, our information of individual personality and behavior is also limited by the scientific equipment or study. So we end up following the most credible theories. But there are a lot of theories to consider. There are too many to count. Some of the more widely known theories include Erik Erikson's stage of development, and there are more theories about humans' personality and development.